Now I found my chi-squared value. Next step, go ahead and start my test. First, I'm going to list R the number of rows and C the number of columns. In this case, I have 2 rows, and it's only 2 because I include thigh and arm. I don't care about my totals, that's not data. It's just what I get from summing up my data. Next, I list the number of columns, and there are 2 as well, yes and no. My degrees of freedom is R minus 1 times C minus 1, which will give me 2 minus 1, which is 1, times 1, or degrees of freedom, 1. Next step, I'll go ahead and write down my hypothesis. My null hypothesis is I'm assuming these things are independent, and I have to assume that because that's how I calculate my expected values. So literally, I'm using independence as an assumption to calculate my expectation. HA is I'm going to try and prove they are dependent. Based on that, I went ahead and found step 3, which is chi-squared. Chi-squared is 2.05. And I'm going to use that in step 4 when I go to find my p-value on my chi-squared table. As a reminder, the chi-squared, just like a t-table, I start by finding my degrees of freedom row. My degrees of freedom in this case is 1, so this is the row I'll be dealing with. If my degrees of freedom wasn't here exactly, just like a t-table, I'd round down. Now that I've gotten that, I'm going to go ahead and try and find my chi-squared value on this table. My chi-squared value is 2.05. So I can find 1.64 and 2.07, and 2.05 would be in between those. That means when I trace these all to the top, my p-value would be in between those two. So that is my p-value is in between 0.2 and 0.15. Covering up the word p-value, I notice 0.2 is bigger than 0.15, so just like the t-table, as I move from left to right, my values are getting lower, so I'd put greater than symbols, moving left to right. Now I've found my p-value, let's go ahead and get rid of my table. And this takes us into step 5, which is my conclusion. To find my conclusion, I always compare my p-value to 0.05. In this case, I notice I have 0.2 or 20% and 0.15 or 15%. Well, I want to compare it to 5%, and 5% is definitely on the side of 15%. So if my p-value is bigger than 15%, my p-value is definitely bigger than 5%. Based on this, then, my conclusion is going to be that I failed to reject H0. That is, there's not actually enough evidence to say these are dependent. For all I know at this point, it turns out it looks like, injection site might have nothing to do with whether or not a child has a severe reaction.